to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Hey, good morning, Asha. How are you doing?
Hey, Steve. How are you? Good morning.
I'm doing good. Well, yeah, good afternoon for you, right?
Yes, it is afternoon, but I can consider it morning. It's okay. It's kind of one of those gray, rainy, sleepy days. So
yeah, we've had several of those here in Austin for sure the last couple of days.
yes.
Well, welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am your host, Steve Harper. With me, as always, is my amazing and beautifully talented co-host, Dr. Asha Prasad. How are you?
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. So we're doing a lightning round today because both of us had something going on at the when this actually will air. So we won't be live streaming this one, but we're recording because we are committed to continuing to bring great conversations and communication to the forefront so that we don't miss a beat, right? So we're talking today about what?
What are we talking about? Well, Steve has a story. First of all, we were talking about, I guess, the way I would consider this topic, Steve, is like how we can get off our center. What can take us like immediately, like in a reaction kind of state. That's the way I would say it. So you want to share your story with all of us first, and then we can kind of talk about it?
Well, yeah. So I brought it up to you that I was thinking about this topic because I was noticing, we've been talking about, understanding and watching, your behavior and sort of what you do, how you respond and react throughout the day. And I was on the way to the office to record with you today, and a guy drove up. We're in a neighborhood on the way to the office, and drives up very fast and aggressive, and no reason for, him to be like right on my tail and then like buzz around me, and then barely stopped at the stop sign and just goes, right? And I went from 0 to 10, like very like, whoa, what a jerk, like why do people do that? And, 15 minutes later, this is going to be a school zone, and I'm going through this whole inner dialogue, and I get to the next stop sign and I see him, and he is now in my lane, going to turn right, and he cuts the corner a little too hard, and he comes off the curb, and I'm like, yeah, serves you right? But I'm thinking to myself as I pull into the office, like, how is it that this guy, with his actions, played such a big impact on how I responded and reacted, and sort of how I took action myself, right? How I responded to the situation. Right. So, why is it that these things in life, right? It could be somebody in traffic, aggressive driving, somebody tailgating you, somebody driving with their brights on, or that annoying voice you hear in a restaurant, or that really slow person in front of you at the checkout counter at the grocery store. How is it that those things just have a tendency to just completely start to ruin our day?
Well, I mean, Steve, I guess the first thing I would say is that it's like, it's normal that we're, our mind is made to be distracted by like the smallest things, anything. So we have to train our minds, first of all, to not get distracted, to get distracted less, right? Yep. But then we've got this whole emotional part of it that comes up, that like what you were saying, like in an instant, you were just like from 0 to 10. But that comes from the fact of, again, just like we train our mind, we've got to train ourselves to not be reactive and be more responsive instead of reactive. Yeah. Now, it's a challenge. It is a challenge because it's one of those things that, it's a natural thing. I say, the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, this is why, daily meditation, daily practices, daily awareness, daily consciousness is so important, because it's the tools that you're building in that time that you want to be able to go to. So, for example, in your example, still, getting upset and reacting, having a response, that's natural. But why did it take 15 minutes later and it was still on your mind? Why did you carry it with you for 15 more minutes?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're the doctor. I'm asking you.
No, but I mean, that's the thing though. We don't even realize how, that one moment we will ruin our entire day
Yep.
because of that.
Yeah.
And is that really worth it? I mean, why are we carrying it? You know, more than likely that person is unaware, totally unconscious, not even realizing what they're doing, not even aware of how their actions are impacting somebody else. But yet we are carrying it with us throughout our day. Why?
Yeah.
What's that about? You know?
Well, it's interesting, and we did talk about this, a few episodes back about the things that take us off our game, right? And this is a little bit of a similarity, but from a perspective of what I went through this morning, I think actually I'm making improvements, because at the end of the day, to be able to recognize the moment that shift occurred and be able to ask that question. So what's that about, right? Why? I woke up in a good mood. I'm, had a really good start to my day. And then in an instant, somebody else's actions or behavior completely changes that perspective. And I think previously it would have just, Monday would have sucked, right? At the end of the day.
The entire day would just be written off. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I kind of recognize it and understand sort of the things that trigger it, right? But to your point, why does the thing still continue to consume mental energy, emotional energy 15 minutes later?
Exactly.
That's the big question, right? So, it is interesting, because you look at these things and you start to wonder how many of these minor annoyances throughout the day occur that just chirp at you, continually.
Exactly.
And how that might lead to how you respond and react in your own life, how you conduct yourself in your work or in your personal life, how approachable or unapproachable you might be because somebody else did something to you in traffic 4 hours ago.
Exactly. That's true. And how present are you in the conversation right now? That kind of thing. Not this conversation, Steve, but you know what I mean. But I mean, no,
I
but
kind of knew what you
seriously,
were talking about.
But it is something like, imagine, that happens before a big meeting. You know, you've got investors coming to the office or something like that. How is that impacting? And that's what I mean by the fact of we carry it with us. Why do we do that? I mean, it's a natural thing that we hold on to things and we get reactive. But that's where the training of the mind and training ourselves. And I think the first step is exactly what you said. You have to be aware of it to begin with. And you have to start questioning these things. You have to start asking yourself these questions. Gosh, why did I respond that way? What was that about?
Yeah.
Why am I still, upset about it? Why am I giving my energy to somebody else that doesn't have any impact on my day, really? But I'm giving him or her the power to do so.
Well, and you touched on something right there that I think is a good question to ask yourself. Does this, in the grand scheme of things, have to impact this moment or the rest of my day, right?
Exactly.
And when you can come to the table with yourself and have that conversation, in the grand scheme of things, it's a momentary blip, like this morning's situation occurred, and it's done and it's over. I don't know who that person is. Hopefully, I never see them again. Hopefully, we don't depart our neighborhoods at the same time. But even if it happens, you sort of have to recognize here's something that you don't want to allow to trigger you. And I can already see it because I can see that car. And right now I can say, oh, in my mind talking to you, yes, absolutely. I'm going to be calm and I'm going to go be zen about it. And then I'm thinking about that silver car and I'm like, oh, I just.
But here's the thing, Steve, let me just ask you something.
Yeah.
What if that guy, had a bad morning, something upsetting happened, or some sort of emergency was where he was headed to?
Yeah.
How would that change your perspective?
Totally.
How would that change the way you would feel it about seeing that silver car? Because we write these stories. This is what our mind does. This is what our conscious mind does, is it writes the stories and it keeps that story in place because we keep on repeating it to ourselves. So for example, whenever we see that car, we're immediately responding that way. But then I like to take it like even a step further back and go, wait a second, maybe, just maybe, that person was rushing, I don't know, to the doctor's office, to the hospital, whatever, rushing for an emergency. That would totally change our perspective.
It would. It kind of reminds me of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And there's a story he tells in there, or an example that they use about a guy that's on the subway and kids are just acting, out of control. And finally somebody speaks up and says something. Are you going to like, discipline your kids or tell them to be quiet or shut down? They're annoying everybody on the train. And this guy is in a fog, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't even noticing. I just left the hospital where their mother and my wife passed away." And that person that raised it, obviously being aggressive and frustrated in the moment, like you said, completely changes the perspective. And so, to your point, right? The lesson or the takeaway potentially is we don't really know what that other situation is because it's not our situation, and you have to hope that any ill intent that they may have had or poor action on their part might have been done, either unconsciously on their part. They didn't realize what a, jerk they were when they were driving, or like you said, there may be a circumstance that dictated that they needed to be more aggressive than they would normally be.
Exactly. I had something, this is just bringing something that came up to me years ago whenever I was in college. I had a professor who I respected very much so. I had to go to have a conference with her or whatever. And she was obviously having an off day. I knew she was having an off day, but I didn't realize until years later. And she basically during this meeting was telling me how disappointed she was in my performance and how I probably would not succeed. Okay.
Wow.
Now, I was 19 years old at the time. And I remember leaving that office thinking I was angry. I was upset. But I thought, oh my God, this person that I respected. And I found out years ago, I had the opportunity to talk to her about 10 years after that. And she was, she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad to hear from you. And oh, what a success you are. And I knew that you'd always be successful. But see, for me, the minute that I was getting on the phone with her, that's the thought. And I brought it up to her and I told her, and I did not know at the time she was going through a very nasty divorce. I had no idea as a student. So now I'm not saying that that's always the case that happens, that there's always something like maybe that guy was just being a jerk and whatever. But whenever we kind of get into this point of view of saying, okay, you know what? I do not know what's going on the other side of that. Yes, allow yourself to get reactive, allow yourself to get angry, but then let it go as quickly as possible. Don't waste your own time and own energy on that because it will deviate you. It'll derail you. It'll distract you from what you're intending for the day.
Well, let me ask you a question because you just said something that caught my ear, which is allow yourself to be angry. Do you really encourage that? I mean, do you really encourage that those emotions that you feel in that moment, you allow them to run their course, or should you find some way to keep that horse in the stall?
I don't think suppressing our emotions or our feelings is a good idea. In fact, Steve, we live in a society where they say, don't be angry, don't, be the nice person, be kind, which is be kind, of course. Don't get me wrong, be kind. But if you've got an emotion coming up, let it find a healthy way to express it or to feel it. Don't let it take over you though. And this is where I say mastery is key. We have to learn how to master our mind. We have to learn how to master our emotions. That doesn't mean that we suppress them. It doesn't mean that we suppress those negative thoughts that enter our mind, for example. And it's not that we suppress it, but, find a healthy way. Don't go, lash out at people, but find a way, which I know people that do that, which is not very productive and
Are you looking
it
at
has
me?
consequences.
I feel like you're looking at me.
Oh my God. But you know what I'm saying? What do you think about that, Steve? What do you think about that? You think we should suppress our feelings?
No, I think it's really good. I think putting it inside and keeping it inside, bottles that up, and it's going to come out at some other juncture, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like the boiling pot. If you don't let the steam, escape occasionally, you're going to have an explosion, and it may come up in ways, and I've seen it myself, something that has festered or I've allowed to, become an issue, and, I've tried to, squash it way down, and then we'll be, in a fight with your, friend or your, romantic partner or whatever. And then all of a sudden you just explode on something that's super minor, but it's like a combination of things. So I totally get that. I think the key takeaway is, being able to acknowledge what happened, ask yourself if it's serving you, and really diving into the moment pretty closely to when it happens so that you can just evaluate it and move on, right? At the end of the day, like you said, had I stopped myself, before I got to that second stop sign and said, well, maybe that person, has a family emergency, or maybe there's another reason, that other than just being a jerk, that they're driving so aggressively and doing that. And just try and give them, light and love, and say, hey, hopefully they, get to where they need to go as safely as possible. That completely changes the perspective, right? So
it does.
I think the key is acknowledging it in the moments when they happen and catching yourself.
Yes.
So that you can, play that good cop, bad cop, instead of like the whole way I had the bad devil on my corner or on my shoulder, like, he hit that curb. So
exactly.
Joke's on him. But then it's still just, I still let it obsess for the next, 3 minutes to, 15 minutes as I got into the office, and it just bothered me. But so, the perspective that you've given today, I think, is really powerful and very, very practical in terms of how people should respond and react. There are things that are out of our control. You don't have, any ability to adjust or change other people's behavior, but you do have the ability to adjust your response to their behavior, right?
Yeah, and that's true. You know what it is? It's about the response that we have, and being responsive rather than reactive is the way I usually look at it, because being responsive is taking responsibility for your actions, and being reactive is just like shooting straight from the hip and just letting go. And sometimes that's not always the best thing. not the best outcome in that.
Yep.
So
nope, I agree. Well, listen, this has been a really fantastic episode. We're doing these lightning rounds where we'll talk about a very specific topic, just really short nuggets that we can come to you and have these quick conversations. And we'll do these from time to time because our audience has asked for these things, right? Very quick, concise, episodes where we can capture a powerful topic or conversation and kind of capture that lightning in a bottle. So I'm really glad we did this. Asha, tell folks how they can find out about maybe if they have a topic they'd like us to cover in a future lightning round conversation, what we, how they can get that information to us or ask their question.
Yeah, definitely. They can visit our website, conversationswithashaandsteve.com, or they can contact us on Facebook or Instagram. Just reach out to us, or you can reach out to us on our individual sites as well. Mine's theprasadmethod.com. And Steve, yours is?
RippleCentral.com. And that's a great place to find us and engage with us. We appreciate everybody paying attention to these episodes and these shows. This has been a really powerful topic, and certainly now I have reset my day thanks to Dr. Asha.
Thank you, Steve, for bringing this up. This is really something that I know all of us are dealing with. So
absolutely,
hopefully it's helpful for those out there. So
all right, hope it helps you guys, and we will be back soon with another new episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. Until then, take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We love to hear feedback and questions from our listeners. Please feel free to visit our Facebook page for more tips and information. You can also email us directly at info@ripplecentral.com for more information.